seems this Nietzsche was quite the profound thinker. Or perhaps he skipped right past profound and went straight to crazy instead. Oh well, enough of that. I'd best go see the world for myself instead of burying my head in books.
NieR Automata is chock full of references to philosophers and their output, as well as to some other works of literature. I think there is a lot of value to be discovered in discussing them and why they were chosen. It is not uncommon for media to pull names and references out of their ass, like I'm pretty sure no character in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is meant to portray a band or a song perfectly. But in Automata, this is a deliberate choice that informs the game's themes and narrative, and, most importantly, is an aspect that does not get referenced directly by the text of the game, respecting the player's ability to either recognize or research these names without pulling you from the main plot to tell you, "Hey kid, did you catch this witty reference to the work of this little-known author known as Aristotle?" But Tidu, I hear you say. This has already been covered by videos like the one by Michael Saba or Super Bunny Hop. Why do this? Do you think you can do a better job? Yeah, well, a more complete job. All of these videos that I've seen only brought up a handful of examples and used them to serve a bigger point. I just finished my thesis dissertation, so fuck bigger points, I'm here to be pedantic and insufferable about the fact that I have a degree in philosophy. Full spoilers ahead, obviously, and I do mean ahead, like right in the next paragraph. This video is made under the assumption that you either beat Automata or don't care about spoilers for some other reason. The very core conflict of Automata is that of ideology and identity. On the surface, the pretext is much more classical, that of an alien invasion, but it doesn't take long to reveal that the reason for the invasion or the counter-invasion is materially moot. Neither the humans nor aliens who created the two mechanical sides of this conflict are still around, and it's not like either of the androids or machines really need the Earth's natural resources or land in any way. Maintenance seems to be done purely through cannibalizing each other for parts, and things like food are a non-issue, and yet there can be no peace. I mean, look at these freaks. They are machines, automatons, unfeeling, uncaring, lacking in any higher cognitive functions. How can they inherit the Earth when the playable side is androids, made in the image of humankind, clearly made to reclaim the world that humans created? Perfect in form, and following the human virtues, emotional, rational, obviously... Wait, somebody is giving me a note. Wait, humanity made intelligent machines other than androids. Androids were mostly there to blend in, and not because there is a higher purpose to the dimorphism. And your android black boxes are made out of repurposed machine cores. My racism has no spiritual or material reasoning behind it. Oh shit! Oh fuck! If this analogy to religion and the ironic twist that the gods of androids are long dead before the game even starts seems ham-fisted, well, congratulations. You are a brighter cookie than a lot of people I saw online. Why does 9S use machine like it's a slur when he's a machine himself?
It's just accessing random, nonsensical data from the old world. There's no actual meaning behind anything machines do.
Why are they human-shaped that's so inefficient? Dude, look in a mirror for once. On the other side of the fence, the machine life forms lack the same kind of divine mandate, manifest destiny drive that the androids have. Initially a hive mind with no sense of individuality with the sole purpose of destroying the enemy, and we'll come back to that later, they began splintering into individuals, and those individuals forming groups. Looking for purpose, they began to imitate humanity. After all, Earth is full of relics of our past. So the machines began to imitate whatever information they could find, on government, on religion, on sexuality even. And if it failed, they tried again, without changing anything or trying to reflect upon their failure. If one dictatorship failed, clearly another dictatorship would fix it. Ah, those silly machines. Humankind would never do such a thing. After all, we have a clear connection with our ancestors and can brainstorm them over their ideas. It's not like people try to guide their lives using dead, inanimate artifacts of thought left behind long ago by individuals they never met, nor do we try to emulate the lifestyle and government styles of civilizations we never had direct contact with. Oh no. I will skim over the self-evident stuff like robots roboinking despite having no robogenitals, or the machine that finds purpose in going fast and self-destructs when it can't go any faster. I think my favorite out of these side quests is the machine that wants to build a rocket and fly to the moon. But it fails and goes to Mars instead. Rather than being amazed by this much more outstanding achievement, it's bummed that it didn't achieve its original goal, missing the forest for the trees because of its stated original purpose, which is a perfect little microcosm of this game's statements on being and looking for meaning in life. Philosophy is an aspect that is both extremely important for the overall themes of NieR Automata, while also not being very directly explained in-game. Many machine lifeforms you encounter in this game are named after famous thinkers, but because this is a Yoko Taro game, they do not serve as direct copies of these philosophers, but rather a cruel twist on the values they try to evaluate and convey. They present either a counter-argument to these values, portray a situation where they can be twisted into something hideous, or straight up serve as a middle finger. Before we get to the philosophers, let's look at the main trio of playable characters. Yorha models 2B, 9S and A2. As confirmed by an interview with the Moonman, Yoko Taro himself, the names of the girls are references to famous phrases from Shakespeare. 2B, of course, is a reference to Hamlet's long monologue on whether to off himself or not. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be outright opens the story talking about being tormented by barbs of fate as she feels anguished by her given role of an executor that has to kill someone she cares for over and over and over. But ironically, she doesn't even have the choice in that matter. Unlike poor, mortal Hamlet, Tubbs is an android and already experienced having herself persisting even as her body perished, because it's just a simple data upload. And of course, when she is free from the shackles of both her fated role as a killer and immortality, she's the one to die permanently and not B by the story's midpoint. Whoops. A2 is at 2, which is a reference to Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, wherein the titular dictator utters "et tu brute contra me," as he's turned into a knife holder by a group of conspirators, including a man he considered to be a good friend of his, Brutus. It's the powerless declaration of betrayal, and just like Caesar, A2 feels betrayed by Yorha, an army she considered herself to be a part of. As it turned out, her entire unit was marked for death, as they were meant to develop more human-like androids in the future by placing them under extreme duress. Unlike Caesar though, A2 survived and is now pissed. And also unlike Caesar, she didn't deserve it. Her character arc is centered around growing out of that anger and bewilderment. She finds machines she does not want to instantly kill, despite believing all her life that they are her mortal enemy, to the point of her being introduced by shish kebabbing what is essentially an infant machine. And she finds two Yorha units that she does want to help preserve, either in body or in memory, in the form of the other two playable characters. 9S is the tricky one, because his name is not a reference to any particular line. I've seen interpretations that it's supposed to be a Latin non esse, to not be, being the second half of to be's existential question. Which makes sense on some level. They're a squad of two and both of them are shown to go bonkers when separated. And it's 9S that gets the rough end of it by not only spiraling so far down into violent nihilism that he not only wants to enliven himself, but also what is essentially every other sapient being left on the planet and any memory of them existing previously. So, one might say that this peppy boy's answer really is not to be, extended to every single mind that he encounters. Still, on the topic of androids, there is some symbolism in their choice of attire, at least for the Yorha units. According to Yoko Taro, they all wear black as is the color of mourning, always ready for death, always prepared to see their comrades die. The combat goggles that look like blindfolds are, again rather obviously, there to signify that our girl and boy don't see the whole picture of the situation, and the similar covering of the mouths of the operator unit signifies that they are not always telling them the entire truth. Alright, enough of these boring anthropomorphic goths. Let's get to the philosopher named bots. An important note before we start: some estates got mad that video games use the names of their patrons, so the Western release of the game had to adjust. So for example, when in the Japanese release you can find a machine called Sartre, in the Western release he's called Jeanpaul, which is particularly silly because the Japanese release of the game already came with English language options in it. Luckily, the switches of the names are usually just the philosopher's given name instead of their surname, so it's not that hard to decode. Just keep in mind, I didn't pull it out of my hat, it's right there in the Japanese PS4 version, I swear I'm not crazy. Okay, philosophers. The very first machine like this is actually outside of the game. Well, okay, it does get mentioned in a weapons story, but it's not an NPC you can interact with. The Amazarashi music video crossover with NieR for the song Deserving of Life came with a short story about the machine Plato 1728. Plato is considered one of the cornerstones of Western philosophical tradition, if not due to his merit, then because of all his work that we know of, 100% are preserved, which is unprecedented for ancient Greece. For example, Socrates, Plato's teacher, left no writing of his own behind. All accounts of him that we have are made by Plato, and at some point it stopped being portrayal of what Socrates said, and my OC Socrates destroyed Suffice with facts and logic. All of Plato's work is in the form of dialogues, the most famous collection of which is the Politeia, or the Republic, and he is never a part of them, probably to avoid looking like a huge tool. The linchpin of Plato's philosophy is idealism, not in the sense that he had his head in the clouds all day, but because he postulated that ideas precede objects, or, in fancier terms, that essence precedes existence. Every object is just an imperfect copy of the idea, like a shadow is an imperfect outline of a physical object. As an example, think about a dog. Not a particular canine, but a representation of the animal in general. You can use that idea to identify dogs in real life, but none of them is a perfect representation of that category. That would mean all other objects that you identify as dogs, but have different traits, are not, after all, dogs. According to Plato, this is evidence that the idea came first and the physical realm is just a reflection of truth, the truth that can be only reached by pure reason without worrying about the material. All knowledge is just remembering the things that we have already access to, which Plato says is portrayed most evidently with laws of mathematics and trigonometry, because even the dullest of slaves can figure out that they just make sense if you set them on the right path. Plato 1728 is ironically named for two reasons. First of all, it's shunned by its peers, so the very notion of being named after someone who presented their ideas through dialogue and is considered the progenitor of the entire Western tradition is funny. If only Plato was socially awkward, his ideas would never reach us in modernity. The second bit of irony is that the machine in the story is not sure what purpose it serves, what's its essence. It finds solace in the material, pieces of useless junk and dolls in the scrapyard it feels kinship with. It cares for these objects dearly, despite other machines saying it's just soulless matter. And then, when trying to defend said garbage, Plato finds their essence, activating combat protocols only available to it. But it brings the machine no solace, as serving its ideal function made it destroy the things it cared for so deeply. Before we go on, I just want to say that I think Plato's allegory of a cave, the aforementioned shadow of objects, was the starting point of a lot of themes in the game. Just as he needed to bring it down a level and describe ideas as physical objects to convey it, so does Automata bring down humans and gods and to androids and mankind. It can be hard to write about the divine, especially in an entertaining manner, without getting criticism for simplifying what is a very complex and important topic to a lot of people. But by bringing the allegory down by a notch and making us a god to these automatons, it is much easier for Tara and the team to make a point about human relationships with the idea of our creators or our purpose in life. I don't know, I just think that's neat. Moving on, the very first machine bosses you encounter in the game are named Marx and Engels. To get to that, you need to carefully write down the names you see written in a font known as Angelic Script, which has been a common element of all the Drakengard and NieR games. Then, by transliterating it, you can... Oh, no, wait, the names are just appear normally in Root B when you play as 9S. That said, the fandom already figured these names out in the demo, which I find commendable. A+. The names Marx and Engels are, of course, a reference to Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, authors of the Communist Manifesto, which was quite formative for the past century. In it, the authors claim that all history is a history of struggle between classes, those who work and make things, and those who use the former class to consolidate their own power. The workers and the bourgeoisie in capitalism, serfs and lords in feudalism. The working class is disenfranchised from the fruits of their labor despite making things they do not own them. Therefore, a perfect classless society would be one where everyone is entitled to their own work and where everyone works, there is no workless class. The Marx and Engels machines are literal war machines, producing and using weapons. The irony is, again, twofold. For one, Marx is just an arm of Engels, whereas in real life the relationship seems to have developed in the opposite direction. Karl clearly overshadowed Friedrich in the collective consciousness of humankind. The second ironic punch comes when you get to talk with one of the Engels bots in Root B. Disconnected from the network, it ponders on the nature of its work and what the fruits of it brought, death and misery for ally and foe alike, and it doesn't bring them any comfort or fulfillment. Engels is appalled and, in the end, decides to deactivate itself. The machine was happier not being in control of what it creates than when it gained it. The next, probably most iconic boss is Simone, named after Simone de Beauvoir. My apologies to any French people in the audience for my pronunciation. The author of such works as The Second Sex. A prominent feminist writer, she coined the theory of gender performance. To quote, "One is not born but becomes a woman." In other words, the biological sex does not determine one's role in society. Affinity for color pink, frilly dresses and feminine mannerism are societal constructs, not something one is born with. Therefore, any criticism of being unfeminine for not being a timid housewife are actually criticism that one does not perform the societal role that is expected of them. The Simone machine takes it to a logical extreme by indeed becoming a woman. Starting off as an androgynous cat with eyes like the rest of the machines, she wants to capture the attention of another machine by becoming more feminine. Using the parts taken from other machine lifeforms and androids, she turned herself into the single most gendered non-android in the entire game. She is also literally in a performance, being an opera singer and running the entire boss fight as a dance with her. But no matter how much femininity she performs, the guy she wanted never noticed her, because his head was so far up his own ass. Said guy can be found in a village right after the fight. Jeanpaul, named after Jean-Paul Sartre, a key figure in existentialist thought and the author of books such as Nausea or Being and Nothingness. Existentialism is a relatively modern philosophical thought, best summed up in a line by Sartre repeated by his mechanical counterpart. Existence precedes essence, a complete 180 on the Platonic idealist thought, claiming that the material objects come before any idea we might have about them. To have an ideal of chairs, a physical chair must first exist. And because it is our existence that precedes the essence of our being, there is no intrinsic purpose to being, only one that manifests as we continue to exist. We are free and fully responsible for our actions, which is equally liberating as it can be terrifying. Condemned to freedom, as Sartre would say. The machine named Jeanpaul is just a minor NPC that serves as a point for one side quest and that's it, but he feels more like a riff on modern philosophy than on works of Sartre in general. He uses complex terms and refuses to elaborate, fully believing his philosophy is self-evident and clear for everyone to see. He has droves of adoring fans that outright admit they don't know what the hell he's talking about, but it seems smart. This in turn feels like criticism of the very surface level understanding of the terminology used by pop culture. Yoko Taro is not a philosopher by education or trade. He is a 3D animator and a creator of commercial failures, but it's clear he put in at least a Wikipedia search for all these machines. I can understand how grating it must be to dive into these topics and find out that, oh, it's about suffering, so existential, is a load of bull by people who repeat buzzwords with no understanding of them. Why not a direct refutation of Sartre's actual work though? Maybe, just maybe, I think it is because Automata as a whole leans towards individualistic existentialism as an answer to questions it poses. It would not be genuine of it to make a limp criticism for the sake of fairness, if that's the case, but we'll get to that with the game's ending. Jean-Paul the Machine just fucks off somewhere without telling anyone at the end of his quest, not accepting any of the love letters we collect for him from the other machines. Just like real Sartre scoffed off at awards and didn't even show up to receive his Nobel Prize. But maybe, if he sat down to talk with others and present his ideas more clearly, if he stayed there and became as well known for his thoughts as he was for his charisma, maybe we would avoid the mess that is the rest of the game's plotline. Just like I could avoid making this video if philosophy was a commonly taught topic and not used as a synonym for worldview. I think that is the irony in here. The village is owned by Pascal. We'll get to Pascal later, keep an eye on them, there's a lot to say. Tubes and Nines get directed to a feudal kingdom ruled by Kingernst. These can be two different references, both are valid. The first possibility is Ernst Cassirer, who wrote The Myth of State, which details the history of idealization of state and giving it absolute power because a country is obviously destined for greatness, from Plato's Republic to Nazi Germany, which happened in his lifetime and in his country of birth. The other possible inspiration is Ernst Bloch, the author of The Principle of Hope, which claimed that humanity inherently strives towards improvement, be it societally or technologically, driving us as a whole towards an utopian society. Both of these can be valid readings, maybe that was the point. Ernst machine died serving his people, sacrificing his parts to fix others. Only his hollow body remains. If the inspiration was Cassier, the irony lies in the fact that his deeds immortalized the king in the eyes of his subjects, creating the very cult of personality and state that the philosopher warned against. It's also worth mentioning that the myth of state was published posthumously, just as you only encounter the kingdom long after the death of its creator and sovereign. If the inspiration was Bloch, the king's goal to make a perfect society for machines lines up. The irony lies in the fact that after his death, his subjects did not carry the torch. They did not have the inherent drive to improve what was already there, and the entire realm stagnated in place instead. It's worth noting that the king intended to have his consciousness transmitted to another machine, and the resulting robo baby is treated as a separate being by the game. The machine is called Immanuel after Immanuel Kant, whose most prominent work is Critique of Pure Reason. There are two distinct spheres of Kantian philosophy, the metaphysical and the moral, because the dude wrote about everything. Speaking in very broad strokes, in metaphysics, he turned attention to the fact that we never experience objects in themselves, only our perception of them. Morally, he basically said that very few acts are truly morally good or evil because they give us rewards such as feelings of joy or gratefulness of others. Only if one acts based on the principle that they should do so, even if it gives them nothing in return, not even satisfaction, can their act be called morally good. It's a morality of obligation. Immanuel Machine is a baby that's supposed to be the king of this realm. It cannot speak in anything but coos, it cannot do anything as it's shaped like a ball. Even if it is aware of its moral obligations, and some materials in-game support that notion, it cannot do anything to act on them. It has nothing but perception of the external world. Hell, it probably only perceives the ceiling above its cradle, so it can only rely on pure reason if it wants any intellectual stimulation at all. Once again, irony. And then it gets shish kebabbed by A2 because fuck Kant, I guess. Moving on. The kaiju-like boss in the sunken city is called Grun, named after Karl Theodor Ferdinand Grun, who wrote under the alias Ernst von der Heide and created works such as the Jewish The Philosophy of the Present. A Marxist thinker, Grun's major point was that humans are inherently social beings that need others to survive. So, communist revolution leading to a tightly knit, classless society is the only logical step for humanity. So, of course, the Grun machine got dumped in the ocean all alone and forgotten by others. At least the philosopher's double exile was self-imposed, sheesh. A machine exclusive to root A is called Soren, named after Soren Kierkegaard, sometimes called the progenitor of existentialism. Creator of such works as Fear and Trembling, Kierkegaard had a very individualistic take on faith, and much of his work is centered around trying to understand his own relationship with God. Deeply skeptical of organized faith, he described three views on morality in humanity. The aesthetic morality, people driven by their own emotional needs and status, exemplified by a bandit king who kills and steals without impunity for his own purposes. Ethical morality, centered around codes of conduct and intellectually aiming to create a universal theory of morals, exemplified by Socrates. And a singular king of faith that he saw in Abraham, a man whose belief was so deep that he was willing to sacrifice his own son to fulfill his God's request. It's worth noting that Kierkegaard did not see Abraham as some moral end-all that we should all strive to become. His worth lies in how unique he was, and, as everyone's faith is a personal matter, trying to emulate him would not be a genuine act of faith. So, of course, Soren Machine is a head of organized religion that does what only gods, or the humankind in this context, can do. He reaches final death, disconnected from the machine network that would carry his self forwards, and the cult formed around him instantly tries to reenact the act of absolute faith and become as gods, by committing mass suicide with blind fanaticism, following the newly created dogma with not even a spark of individual reflection on it to be seen. Oh, the irony. At the end of the factory that served as the cult's temple, you also find this ball of fun called Sochi. Ballbots like this are fought at different parts of the game and are also called Koshi, Roshi and Bokushi. They are all Japanese readings of Chinese philosophers. Koshi is Confucius, Roshi is Lao Tzu of Taoism fame, Bokushi is the founder of Mohism, and Sochi is Zhuangzi. I'll be honest, I got nothing. None of these machines say, do, or are surrounded by anything relating to their namesakes. Can it be a riff on how little influence they have on currently prevailing philosophical thought? The fact that they are all from the times much earlier than most other philosophers mentioned, as if East has no contemporary philosophers? Or maybe it's just the fact that the game needed more bosses and Taro slapped something together at the last minute, considering all these boss fights feel rather fillery. I've got nothing, as I said. Koshi and Roshi meld together to make Koroshi, a dumb pun on the Japanese word to kill. That's all I can get. The final bosses of routes A and B are called Adam and Eve. No points for guessing where these two came from. Shaped like androids and made from android parts through raw birth, these two are probably the most blatant attempt at understanding humanity by emulating it. So, rather than us being made in the image of Adam and Eve because we all stem from them, Adam and Eve are made in our image. Pure nurture, no nature, and the very first thing that Adam encounters is violence from these two very bright bulbs. Trying to become the very image of mankind, Adam studies literature almost religiously to try and understand us. But, as a great historian, Yang Wenlei once said, human history could easily be said to be the history of war, so Adam quickly gets the idea that the true essence of what it is to be human is hatred and the finality of death. Steering shit and rejoicing in the cold embrace of 2B's sword as it gets driven through him. What was an immortal being condemned to mortality for daring to understand the difference between right and wrong gets twisted into someone who believes truth lies in evil and finality. Eve, his brother, sprouts out of Adam in a very biblical way, but he is a bit of a different spin. He views himself as only existing as a part of his brother, kinda like the mythological Eve was made out of Adam's rib. Despite being entire, separate, autonomic being, Eve can't imagine viewing the world without the lens of his brother. I suppose kinda like a traditional Christian law deems women to only exist as accessories for men. And it's a shame because Eve is such a goddamn cinnamon roll, wanting nothing else but to just chill and have fun with his bro. But as Adam gets his wish of please, I wanna know what it's like to die, Eve goes on a nihilistic tantrum to wreck the world. If he could only view the world through his brother, then how dare the world exist beyond his death? Though, ironically, it is Eve that serves as a true final boss of routes A and B, and it's his death that has the wide-reaching consequence that leads into events of route C, and it is him that carries Adam's wish of seeing and feeling hatred and death to a far greater extent. Despite seeing himself as only part of another person, he turns out to be far greater than him. Satan did nothing wrong, reject the bliss of ignorance, embrace knowledge, moving on! It's route C. All goes to shit. The bunker is falling from the sky, the machines went from cannibalizing parts to actual cannibalism. So, let's talk about Pascal. Named after Blaise Pascal, who was primarily a mathematician and turned towards philosophy later in his life. Pascal is primarily known for Pascal's wager, which goes as follows. God is an unknown, does he exist, does he not, we have no proof but faith. But if you do believe, you get a shot at eternal life in paradise, while all non-believers get condemned to hell no matter how swell they are. So wouldn't it be logical for you to believe, just for that chance? You gain nothing by being a filthy atheist after all. While seemingly logical, the wager omits the possibility of God being a dickweed and condemning believers to hell just for believing, so it is not, in fact, a genuinely balanced proposal. It's an argument based on fear. Do what I tell you to, or risk hell. Pascal the machine created a village of like-minded pacifistic robots to live in their own version of conflictless paradise. They educate baby bots through fear as well, not by being a tyrannical leader or anything like that, but by simply saying that bad things come to bad little robots. So of course, in route C, hell comes knocking, burning the village down. In fact, it happens as you try to deliver a book to them, Pont C, or Thoughts, penned by the original Pascal but never finished, just like that delivery is never going to reach the hands of the Pascal machine. Forced to break their own convictions to defend the children, Pascal merges with an Engels bot to unleash absolute hell on those who attack them. With the danger dispatched, they run to tend to the children. Children who, driven by the same fear that was supposed to keep them safe and happy, committed mass suicide. When paradise is lost and hell breaks loose, despite keeping your convictions that were supposed to prevent that to the letter, despair follows. And Pascal too follows suit, asking A2 to either wipe their memories clean or kill them. As a player, you can oblige to either of these. Or you can walk away and force Pascal to be the first machine to confront the reality of what happened and perhaps adapt instead of trying to wipe the slate clean to only commit the same mistakes in the future. Life can be painful, but suicide, be it physical or spiritual, is not the answer. On a smaller note, as you accept the delivery of the book, you get a tiny bit of Pascal being playable. There is not much to do, except leave their tiny little hut to kick off the tragic events. And in Point C, Pascal Philosopher Rights, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. But despite that quote being very popular, it's not the end of that train of thought at all. Later on, he continues to say that the statement might seem true on its surface, but being left alone only leads to melancholy and sadness, and that one cannot just sit and wait for good things to happen. We must look for happiness outside of ourselves, which is exactly what Pascal has to do if left alive and with memory intact. Dare I say Kino? No. Ludo. Let's go on. Going back a bit, at the beginning of Route B, 9S seems a small robot trying to help his brother by pouring oil on him. We even get to play that part out, which is infuriating. Said machine is called Friedrich, which can be a nod to Friedrich Nietzsche. Author of such works as Thus Speaks Zarathustra, he deeply despised the Christian herd morality of elevating weakness to a virtue and detesting personal strength. Saying that God is dead, which is apt for Automata, but it was more about scientific discovery uprooting the influence of the Church in the West, Nietzsche said that we need to re-evaluate our values or to be left to a nihilistic despair. He envisioned a new kind of human, an Übermensch, that would lead humankind to its future with a new morality in tow, valuing individual self-betterment achieved by surviving through hardship. So of course, Friedrich Bot is a scrawny little thing that has no power and no means of bettering itself. The idolized figure of a brother dies and drives the little robot into despair, as with Nietzsche, who, despite viewing pity as weakness, went mad from grief at the end of his life upon seeing a horse senselessly battered to death by its owner. The robot brother is called August, which is probably a shout out to Auguste Comte, which is the father of positivism, the philosophy that all science should be based on positive phenomena, so that which can be viewed and measured empirically and relations between those objects, rejecting things like intuition and introspection. But there's nothing to that when it comes to the machine itself. Like, it shows up to be angry and die, that's it, there is no lines, there is no context that would connect the machine and the philosopher. I've seen people mention that the two brothers might instead be references to artistic duo of brothers, Friedrich and August Hegel. That might be true, but A. I like the Nietzsche reading of Friedrich way too much to discard it, and B. The Hegels were poets and way outside of my jurisdiction as such. I'm really bad at appreciating poetry on like any level. So we'll have to cut our romance with two raw bros short. As a 2, when you angrily run around the world looking for another target for your rampage, your pod directs you towards the desert where you find a machine called Hegel. As his namesake is a very prolific author, excuse me as I consult the literature. Kurwa, okay, so Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, man that's the third Friedrich in this game, is extremely important for the modern philosophical landscape, spearheading the philosophy of the likes of Marx, setting precedents for the notion of historicism, that history moves in a certain determined direction and all great events are but the course revealing itself to us in a seemingly never-ending process. You might have heard of the term Zeitgeist, that is its origin, the spirit of the times in literal translation. The issue with Hegel is that he was an atrocious writer, and trying to parse his work is like reading religious scripture from a foreign culture after it got pulled through 5 translation teams. The Phenomenology of Spirit, which I had the pleasure of partially reading, will not leave me, as the titular spirit haunts my nightmares even when my eyes are open. Probably the most important part of his work is the notion that the historical process develops through a dialectic. A certain force, a thesis, will always be met by an equal antithesis opposing what it stands for. Through conflict, they form a synthesis, a new complete whole made from elements of both, which becomes the new thesis, which will be met by its antithesis, and so on. The Hegel machine is a string of ball-bots we saw earlier, a seemingly never-ending string of repeating but separate parts. As all ball-bots have separate names outside of Hegel, I have to assume that here too they are individual parts of a bigger whole, just like historical events string into direction taken by the spirit. The machine itself doesn't speak, but forces introspection onto A2, who, in her own cybernetic mindscape, has to face not only the memories of past that made her incredibly pissed, but also the memories of 2B bleeding in as she entrusted them to A2 before in a symbolic way by giving her her sword. The aimless, perpetually angry Falmouth thesis meets a stoic, emotions are prohibited with a hidden personal torment as a drive antithesis. What emerges is a synthesis of A2 who is still clearly herself, but also calmer, able to see the bigger picture, and, ultimately, caring. That's it, even Yoko Taro couldn't find humor in Hegel. There is no irony. Die. The perpetrator of all the misery in this world, the mind behind the machine network, is an AI known as N2. The name is not a particular reference to anything, except maybe the fact that the game states that it only formed after the hive mind got hold of the original human data, including a certain person very important to the history of this world. So the N might actually stand for NieR, NieR 2. The machine consciousness was given a simple order, to destroy the enemy. But once it grew smarter and more human-like, it understood what a dead-end goal that was. After all, what happens once you kill the last of your opponents? So they decided to do the next logical thing and kill their creators for their myopic stupidity and hamstrung their own war effort in order to find a solution. All the individualistic machines seen in the game were not splintered due to some freak accident, but as localized experiments to try and find a purpose beyond conflict. But because all this soul-searching was based on human exploits, it didn't go so well, as evident in the rest of the game. Rather than being named after a philosopher, N2 is an exemplification of a purely naturalistic being, pre-philosophy. One could say it's a spin on the naive view on Darwinism and survival of the fittest, a never-ending fight for limited resources that leads to only those with most suited traits to be left. But there are examples of creatures in nature that just find their niche and chill in it, something that many self-proclaimed Darwinists and whatever alien that programmed the machines clearly omit. The machine consciousness exists in a state of nature, as Hobbes would put it, driven by the one command, one instinct written into its essence: conflict. And in the confrontation with A2, the only way to defeat N2 is to derive them of said conflict by not engaging with it. Needing an enemy to destroy, it turns onto itself, destroyed by the very core of its own being and the purpose why it exists. The ending E of Automata, the very final one, has two messages. One in its gameplay and one in the cutscene that comes after it. The gameplay part has been widely discussed. A hopeless boss fight against the very creators of the game turned possible as you accept the sacrifice and help of strangers from around the world. At the end, you get a choice to make a similar selfless deed. Give up all of your save data to help someone you never met, someone you might dislike. All that proud completion for a man or woman you'll never cross on the street knowingly. Only as you accept the full implications of this choice does the game do it. It's a touching little moment, inspired, as admitted by Taro, by a small stunt by Coca-Cola where a person from India could buy a drink for someone in Pakistan or vice versa, despite the political tensions between the two nations. It's a nice touch, underlining how even if we do not agree on our purpose, being or any other hoity-toity issues, we are all connected by a thread of common humanity. A very nice, positive note at the end of a story full of despair, aimless dread and anger. But it's the scene after that I want to focus on, where the two pods reassemble the three main androids out of sense of commitment to them, despite the fact that it's the pods that were supposed to turn off the lights after the self-destructing Yorha project is done. They decided to go against their programming, or their essence. And at the very end they discuss whether this is a good idea or not. After all, the three androids are made out of the same elements as before. Their memories and personalities are intact. In other words, their essence remains unchanged. They are the exact same objects as the fuck-ups we saw spiraling down the misery staircase for the last 40 hours. Knowing that, will repairing them not only cause the events to repeat? To which the game proudly with its head held high proclaims, I don't know, man. Maybe so. Maybe their physical and spiritual composure predetermines such fate and there is nothing we can do about it. But maybe, just maybe, the equation is reversed. Maybe their existence is what precedes their essence, and by letting them continue to be, they will have a chance to find a new meaning. Maybe there is this terrifying, absolute freedom ahead of them that they can shape to their best of their intent and abilities. The coin is up in the air, so I guess let's exist and find out. As an end note, hi. I hope not to do this until I get 1000 subs, but hey, I recently lost my job and my brain is broken because I decided to prioritize finally getting this video off my chest over anything else. A man is free to do what he wants, but he is not free to want what he wants. Like my favorite depressed grandpa Schopenhauer once said, which is a fancy way of saying I'm stupid and can't focus on more than one long-term goal at once. I have a coffee, linked in the description, and due to the difference of purchasing power between Poland and America, a single dollar means much more to me than it probably would to you, unless you also live in a shithole, so yeah, sorry about that if you do. I hope I'll be able to continue existing and making more videos. Love you. See you in a month.